Hi, everybody. This is Paul Hitchcock. I'm the founder and president of Giant Jacks Media. This is my channel called Giant TV, where I have incredible entrepreneurs and owners doing amazing things. And certainly, my guest today fit the bill. I have Master Chair Jeffrey Bauer, who is a chair for Vistage out of the greater Hartford area. Jeffrey, welcome.
Thank you. Great to be here today, Paul.
Yeah, and then I have Alain Hunkins, who, Alain, there isn't much you don't do. I mean, you and I have had a chance to talk, but you are best-selling author, speaker, facilitator, in high demand for your training across the country, working with incredible companies over the years, Microsoft, Goldman Sachs, Marriott, list goes on and on. And it's your focus, of course, is leadership. Welcome.
Thank you, Paul. I'm really happy to be here with you today.
Yeah, no, this is great. And so, Jeffrey, I want to start off by getting into your Vistage practice. If you could just tell everyone a little bit about what exactly you do there with Vistage as a master chair.
Sure. So I run a number of groups within Vistage. The primary group type that we run is the chief executive group. I actually have two of those. I work with each of the members of my chief executive groups one-on-one every month, as well as in a full day group session where we bring in amazing speakers like Alain and we get to learn on topics. I pick speakers based on topics of interest to my groups, and my members walk away with a long list of personal action items coming out of the speaker sessions. In addition to the chief executive groups, I run a group for key executives, for advancing leaders, for trusted advisors, and also for emerging leaders.
Is that all? That's all? You have a
That's
lot of groups over there.
six groups.
Oh no,
Yeah,
that's awesome. Well, let me ask you about the chief executive group. Obviously, I know Vistage, you love Vistage, but for the sake of our audience, you're getting together monthly where all the chief executives get in one room. You're facilitating that. Describe what that looks like for a few minutes. What is that all about?
sure. 6 to 8 of the monthly meetings, we bring in guest speakers. The rest of the time, we spend an executive session where we're looking at the issues, opportunities, and challenges that each member is up against. And we're following a process to do a deep drill. And, as business owners, as business leaders, all too often we're solving symptoms and we're not getting down to the root cause. Our goal is to get down to the root cause. Dun and Bradstreet has done many studies on companies run by Vistage members. And what they've come up with is that on average, companies run by Vistage members grow 2.2 times faster year over year than
Yep.
comparable companies run by non-members. And it's really that process of digging into the issues, opportunities, and challenges and coming up with real answers and being able to execute on them.
Are you finding that the CEOs in your group, when they're coming together, are they truly rolling up their sleeves, getting into it? Are they, making themselves vulnerable and networking outside of the group? I mean, what do you see happening with all of those leaders?
Yes, yes, and yes.
Yeah.
They definitely become very vulnerable. My job is to create a safe space where they can be vulnerable. When we go through issue processing, we are digging deep. We're trying to get past the stories that we have in our heads that are limiting beliefs of ours and really get down to brass tacks and make it all go the way we want to see it go. Yes, my members interact not only inside the group, but outside the group. One of my groups meets for breakfast 2 weeks after every month's meeting
Oh,
and
nice.
just go deeper. A bunch of my groups, we create member-led triads. So beyond the one-to-one sessions I do with my CE members, my other groups do member-led triads so that they can go deeper and get more of the benefit.
Yeah, and I know it's non-competing industries, so it's safe that way. And kind of a last question I want to ask you is, do you have open seats now, and who would be a good addition to the group?
Yes, I definitely have open seats. And what I look for are growth-minded entrepreneurs. People that recognize we can all do better, we can all learn, and that's what they want to do. I don't want people in the room with massive egos that think they got every answer. Um, I want people that have the growth mindset.
Yeah, no, wonderful. Well, I'm gonna tell everybody listening that wherever you're watching this, because we stream this everywhere, LinkedIn, YouTube, it goes a lot of places. Jeffrey's information, if you want to get connected, learn more about what he's doing, is going to be around this video, maybe up here, down here. So check that out. I gotta say too, Jeffrey, I know this, that video behind you, you took that shot, right? Remind me where that is.
Absolutely. That's on Cape Cod.
Yeah,
I have a
okay.
house up on the Cape, and I just really wanted a very calming background. So as we have difficult conversations, I'm not tensing people up more with the background.
It upsets me because I wish I was there. I don't like it. I don't like it. No, thank you. That's great. Allah. All right, we got to dive into this because I'm going to let you describe what you do rather than me get into details. You'll do it better. But tell me what is your focus and what do you want to share with CEOs?
Great. Well, thank you. And I think kind of coming on the heels of what Jeff just talked about is a good segue into what I do because if you think about CEOs, like most of us that get into these roles, we were very good at what we do. We don't necessarily stop and think about how we go about doing it. And what I see is there's a perennial trap that many, many leaders fall into, which is we tend to rely on certain strengths. And those strengths, when they become overused, become a limit to growth. And so, what I do is help CEOs and all leaders for that matter at different levels. What I help them to do is to unlock their leadership capacity by giving them a simple framework to start thinking about their mindset about what does leadership really mean. And then beyond the framework is also then helping them giving them some practical tools to unlock that framework in the day to day. Because ultimately, at the end of the day, leadership is not your title. Leadership is not an attitude. Leadership boils down to what do you do every day. So I help people to develop better habits. Just like we have habits around health, we have habits around focus, habits on learning. You can have leadership habits. And so I'm the leadership habits guy, and that's what I do is I help leaders and teams within organizations to develop stronger leadership habits that are going to help them to ultimately deliver better results. And by the way, they're going to have more fun doing it at the same time.
Yeah, no, very interesting. And so, a question I have as you describe that is, is there a common thread that is woven amongst these leaders where you say, okay, these are the common cracks in what's happening at the company or with the leadership that bells go off in your head saying, okay, I got to get involved here. I mean, what is happening that where you need to come in?
Yeah, it's a great question. I think a couple fold. There's two different ways to look at it. So there are the leaders who want to bring me in, and things are going okay, but they realize they are not tapping into what their potential is. So I call that group of people is like we're good, but we want to be great, right? And so I get brought in terms of that is recognizing we have some limits to growth. That maybe that we're growing as a company not because of our leadership, but maybe in spite of it. And so
Oh,
oftentimes these are future focused leaders who realize there's a whole level of untapped potential. So that's one group. The other group would say where people are going, wow, things are really broken. I have key people who are quitting. I'm unable to sustain this. We need help. And it's very apparent. And the question always is like, what level of wake up call do you need to realize that you should be developing your capacity yourself and your teams? And, again, one of the patterns that I see so often is that many leaders resort to becoming they tend to get there because they were really good doers. And so there's the tendency that when there's a problem to want to jump in and fix, which is admirable. However, when you're a CEO of an organization and you're leading leaders who are leading other people who might be leading leaders, fixing isn't the point. The point is not for you to be an excellent doer. It's how do you lead teams of people who can unlock and develop answers for themselves because that is the only way you're going to be able to scale effectiveness in any organization.
yeah, that's a great comment. And following through on that, you mentioned, a problem could be top executives leaving or something like that,
Hmm.
which in my mind, I'm thinking, okay, because they're leaving. I hear a lot about, the culture isn't great. There's some toxicity going on there. So how do you connect the culture of a company and what you do with the leader and what they're doing or not doing to have a good culture?
Oh, God, this is a huge question. So culture is I call it's the fish bowl in which we're all swimming, right? And fish don't realize they're in water; they just live in it. Like this is it. Same for company culture. It seems like it just is. Well, it isn't just is. It was created either intentionally or unintentionally by the behaviors that became norms, that became an environment over time. And so if you want to change a culture, you as a leader have to start looking at very intentionally what are the behaviors that we condone? What are the behaviors that we don't condone? So, for example, if people are cutting corners ethically and you're all okay with that, no one says anything,
Oh yeah.
that sends a very clear message, for
Yeah, yeah.
example.
Great
Right?
example.
If we have conflict and instead of me, let's say you and I, Paul, have a conflict, but instead of you and me dealing with it, I go and talk to Jeff about it and I start triangulating and turning into the gossip mill. Guess what? We have a culture where we are conflict avoidant, triangulation, and gossip. And so we have to realize all these things come at a price. There's been tons of research over the last 15 and 20 years that show that leaders don't just make a difference. Leaders are the main difference when it comes to metrics such as profitability, productivity, employee engagement, and retention, and so forth. It hits the top line, it hits the bottom line, it hits every single line in between.
Yeah, well, I want to ask you, Jeff, for your opinion because I know Allah has talked to your group before. Uh, these issues come up like when you're doing the monthly meetings, your one-to-ones. I got to imagine these are issues across the board that are coming up.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And the first topic that Alon spoke about, this CEO feeling they have to solve the problem and they have to jump in. I usually put it in terms of strategic versus tactical involvement in your business. When a CEO is very tactical, they are significantly limiting the growth of the organization because if the floodgates were to open tomorrow, there's only one of them. If they're in the middle of everything that's going on, they can't possibly absorb the potential for growth. I work very heavily with my CEOs, with all my members, on getting to an appropriate level of strategic versus tactical involvement. At the CEO level, 95% should be strategic.
Yeah,
A little bit of tactical is okay. But the
yeah.
heavier that they are on the tactical side, the less likely they are to be able to take advantage of opportunities that come their way. So I
Hmm.
very much would agree with what Alan was saying there.
Yeah, yeah, and a lot. So, what does an engagement look like? How do you get in there? I mean, are you meeting with the leadership and executive management team? Can you walk me through a little bit about that
Sure.
engagement?
Sure. So engagements look different depending on the size and scope of the organization, but generally there is an internal stakeholder that recognizes we have an issue. We need help, right? Sometimes the awareness that you need help is the first huge step.
Yeah,
So they will reach out to me, and depending on the engagement, what I try to do is do some discovery work where I try to speak to a number of different stakeholders to get a more 360-degree view of the issue. And then we take a look at, okay, so in terms of solutions, what kind of solution are you really looking for? Because, frankly, some people are just like, hey, we have our annual manager offsite and we'd like to bring someone in for 3 hours to do a workshop. Can you do that? The answer is yes. And we know that that's going to be good, but is it going to stick long term in a way that a more strategic intervention might do? So, depending on the appetite, the size, and the scope of the project, for example, I'm in the middle of designing a leadership academy for a client right now, where we're taking every year, they put two cohorts of 25 people where we're taking them through multiple in-person day trainings. We're also doing virtual trainings, virtual group coachings, and individual one-on-one coaching with people over the course of a year. Now, clearly, that's a more significant investment in terms of time, in terms of money,
yeah,
but in terms of results, because we all know anyone who's ever tried to set a New Year's resolution knows that changing behavior is hard, right? We are creatures of habit. And so we have to realize, are the habits that we bring to work the best habits to help support the business? I like to talk about the difference between organizational smarts and organizational health. Plenty of you listening right now are smart, right? You know your business, you know what you're about, what you're trying to do in terms of sales, marketing, operations, your product, your service, etc. However, in terms of health, do we have that same level of rigor when it comes to health? That is, are we clear with each other in terms of how we communicate? Are we honest? Do we manage and deal with conflict creatively and smart? So there's so many things that we need to be able to do to create healthy organizations. How would we describe trust here? Lots of people can do the smart piece, but until you unlock the healthy piece, which is rare, you're going to have these limits to growth as you go. And it's, connecting to what you're talking about with Jeff too. I mean, one of the things that I tell leaders a lot and why they get stuck, why Jeff is talking about why CEOs get stuck in tactics instead of the strategy is, as one of my mentors once said to me, you can't read the label when you're inside the jar, right? In
No,
other
yeah,
words,
yeah,
right? I think you get it, right? Is
yeah.
the fact that we're all stuck in our own way of being, thinking, and acting. And if we could get unstuck, we would, but sometimes we need a little help or a lot of help.
Very insightful. I got to ask you, when you and I first met, instant rapport, be very easy to talk to. And I imagine, your personality has to be a big factor when you're dealing with these issues because you're dealing with probably a lot of type A personalities with the owners and then employees or execs. Maybe you're getting pushback. I don't know. What makes
Yes.
you, where does this come from where you're able to get in there? Are you a good listener? Are you, self-deprecating? I mean, what qualities do you have that make this all work?
That's a great question. So I'd say there's a couple of major qualities that I'd say. One of them being listening, absolutely. But it's not just listening with, oh, I hear everything you say. It's the ability to listen, not just at the surface, but hear what's not being said and what's living one or two or three levels deeper. And then to be able to inquire and be curious about, hey, you say this, what do you think might be driving that? So it's this co-creative listening process in terms of this. The other thing is, frankly, at this point, it's nearly 30 years of experience of recognizing patterns. So what
Yeah.
feels very unique to you is not unique to me, right? This is not my first rodeo. And it turns out that it doesn't matter. I work in every industry at every level. It turns out there's only so many different behavioral combinations of patterns. Now when you start combining them, it goes into the hundreds. But when you break them down, you're talking about maybe 20, 30 different types of behavioral patterns that keep showing up. And so one thing I do is I also, in listening, is able to reflect back to people and Jeff used this word too, is creating a psychologically safe environment. So there are things that I do very intentionally. So you talk about being self-deprecating. Sometimes it's very important for me. Let's say I'm leading a group, for me to sit down, literally sit in a chair when I'm talking at certain times and then I'll debrief it and say, why did I sit down? Oh, because you literally wanted to be on the same level as us. Because when I'm sitting, and so it's being aware of status. And I think as leaders, we need to be very intentional because everything we do in our behavior, that is not just our words, but our actions send a message. The question becomes, is it the right message that we want to be sending?
That's so great because I just find that today the art of listening is almost dead in so many ways. People don't listen; they're just talking at each other all the time. And like you would,
Yeah.
you ask a question, somebody says something, and no one's asking a follow-on question. I see that everywhere. And I imagine Jeffrey, I know you've told me before, you got to have some of the same skills, right, with your members and your one-to-ones in the
Absolutely.
group. I mean, you finding similar things you got to do?
Very much so. It's I often use the term head trash. We all have head trash and trying to dig past that head trash, trying to dig past the stories we tell ourselves. You got to get very inquisitive. You've got to ask a lot of questions. You got to just keep drilling. And eventually you get there. And there's kind of the aha moments of, oh, yeah, maybe that is in my way. And
Yeah.
we can start working past it.
Yeah. No, well said. One of the last things I want to ask you is if somebody, and again, your information will be around here as well. People can connect with you. If somebody's interested, do you have an initial sort of complimentary session you go through, and what do you do there?
Yeah, sure. So basically, I'm happy to do a complimentary discovery session. Usually it's about 30 minutes. We do it on Zoom. And it's just for me to, again, it's kind of what Jeff was just saying, just listening. Tell
Yeah.
me, what are your biggest challenges? What are you hoping is going to be different? If we could wave a magic wand, what would be different with you and or the group 3 months from now, 6 months from now, after an engagement? So it's very much trying to understand your needs and then try to reflect back how I could be of service to that. And sometimes, someone comes and says, hey, we really want to get on the front wagon of how to manage AI. It's like, I'm not your guy, but I know someone who is. So,
Yeah.
it's also trying to qualify, am I a good fit? Are we a good fit for working together? So,
Yeah.
Yeah. Yep. Fantastic. Well, thank you both for being here on Giant TV. I mean, you make me look good, so I appreciate it. And yeah, thanks everybody for listening. I know obviously we'll talk again with the two of you, so thank you.